here we are. So I cannot see the chat as I'm talking, so I'm very much hoping that this is all fine. Welcome to MicroBit Live. We're going to do introduction to MicroPython. So the link down on the bottom left is the link to this presentation. So there'll be a few links in a moment. So feel free to open this presentation and you'll get those links. And on the right is my Twitter handle. So if I don't get to any questions that you had in this presentation, feel free to catch me on there. So very, very briefly, just who am I? Why are you listening to me? Basically, I used to hate coding. I did a physics degree, and that was the first time I did any coding, and I didn't understand any of it. I didn't get the logic. I didn't get the syntax. It just wasn't taught in a way that made sense to me, and I found it really, really confusing. It made me feel stupid, which I hated. So I decided coding wasn't for me. And then a few years later, I started doing some online courses to do some Python, just doing fun things, making games. And I realized actually coding was great. It was just, you had to be taught it in a specific way to get your interest to begin with. And then a few years after that, I started working for Science Oxford, which is an educational charity, and I run our coding activities and tech activities. So I've been really lucky to be able to do loads and loads of cool microbit workshops. I love robots, so lots of my things have robots in them, but not all of them. And I usually use MicroPython because I love text-based coding. I just think it's really fun, and it's really useful for people to get an introduction to that even from quite a young age. With younger primary school kids, it's good because they have to use a keyboard and they have to spell things and really think carefully about what they're doing. And with older students, it's just a really good introduction to physical computing, doing Python on a microbit, and vice versa, trying to learn text-based coding for the first time, having something really amazing like a microbit to do it with is perfect. So in a moment, I'm going to go straight into a demo using the editor. So these are the links to everything. So the first link here is the version 2 of the Python editor. So that'll have all of the version 2 microbit stuff on it. I'm going to use the beta editor because it has autocomplete. So you won't have to sit and watch me type accelerometer in really slowly and spell it incorrectly. But the autocomplete can be off-putting sometimes for students because there's too much information, so it's up to you which one you want to use. There's also an offline editor called Mu, which I think is great. I've got it installed on all of the laptops that I use at work. And then if there's any problems with internet connection, anything bad happens, I've always got that installed. Then below that is a link to documentation. So everything you will want to know about using MicroPython on a microbit is in that documentation. I don't usually give the link to students unless I'm happy that they're not going to get overwhelmed with the amount of information. But just everything is there. It's really fantastic. The microbit projects, there's some Python projects on there which are really, really great and really talk you through how to do various things. And finally, just for your information, really, there's I keep the instructions for my workshops on this link here. Not all of them are Python and not all of them are microbit, but it's just to give you a bit of info if you're interested. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'm going to come and check the studio, make sure that no one's complaining that you can't hear me. That looks good. So we'll go straight into the editor. I can't see the comments and I also can't hear you. So I'm really, really sorry if I'm going too fast or if I miss anything. I will catch up with you all on the chat after the demo and on Twitter afterwards. So this is the editor. This is the Python editor. When you first get to it, the first thing that I'm going to do is zoom right in so that you can see it a bit more clearly. That's very useful if you're doing demos in a classroom. And so this is what you'll see when you first log in. There's the download button on the side, which is when you click download, it will save a hex file on your computer. So similar to with MakeCode, you can then drag and drop that onto a microbit or save it for later use. If you rename your program on the right, it will name it that way. But the better way to do it is to connect your microbit, and the download button now changes to Flash. So when I click Flash, it will now send it directly to the microbit without me having to drag and drop anything, which is great. You can also load and save files, so load previous hex files, choose to download it as a Python script instead of a hex, and add other files to your microbit there. So we'll go back to the serial in a moment. So I'm just going to check my notes to make sure that I'm covering all the things that I expected to be covering. So I'm going to assume that you've never done any Python before and taught you like you're a group of 10-year-olds. So apologies if this is all super familiar to you. But the very first line that you see is all grayed out because that is a comment. So this is really useful if you want to make some notes that aren't going to run. If I don't put that hash, it will think that that is a line of code that I'm trying to run, and you will get an error message on your microbit. The second line here from microbit import star, super important. Do not delete this from your programs or nothing will work. This is the microbit library. So everything to do with the microbit's display and the buttons and the accelerometer, all of that code is inside this library. So it needs to be imported for your programs to work. The first line of sort of proper code that we're given is this while true. This is Python's version of a forever loop. It's sort of short for while true is true. And you can sort of any way that if you use Python, not necessarily MicroPython, any way that you do a forever loop, you can do in MicroPython as well. So while one works as well. I always stick to while true. I often tell kids not to worry about it. It just means forever. It depends on what age I'm working with. Capital letters are very important in Python. So you'll notice a lowercase w and a capital T. And at various other points, this capital I for image and the capitals for heart. If you don't use capitals in the right place, you'll get an error message. So it's really useful, especially with young people, to just be like, oh, just check your capital letters. They usually just see what they want to see. So it's really good for slowing down and trying to actually look at what you're doing. Colons, brackets, speech marks or apostrophes, all of that syntax is very important in Python, in all text-based coding. And we also have here this indentation. So this is one tab space on your keyboard or 4 spacebar spaces. And this, the way I describe this to young people is usually to compare it to Scratch or to MakeCode. So I say you would slot a block inside a block, inside a loop, and we're sort of slotting this inside our forever loop by putting this indentation in front of it. So it means that this will happen forever. If you forget to indent, you won't get an error message because there's nothing actually wrong with this code. There's nothing syntaxically wrong with this code, but logically, the first line will run forever and the rest of the code will just never happen because Python runs things from the top down. It will go in order. So in MakeCode, you can often put your forever loop underneath some other code and it will just do everything the way you want. But in Python, you have to think carefully about the order that you're trying to run your code. So I'm just going to very quickly switch back to the comments to make sure that there's no confusion. Nope, fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly show you a few different things that you can add into your program using Python. So I'm going to start by making happen when I'm instead. So we have a dot was pressed, and then we need to indent all of this to make it happen only if the button is pressed. And now I'm going to say else. So if we haven't pressed the button, we're going to clear the display instead. So the editor will do some indentation for you. You'll notice when I pressed enter after I typed else, it knew that I was trying to write something that needed to be indented. But you've just got to keep an eye on that as you're going. I'm also going to add in the accelerometer. So in this time I want, oh, I skipped over some bits. I'm very sorry, everyone. So this first line here, display.scroll, this is going to scroll whatever you put in the speech marks on the display of your microbit. So similar to how it would work in MakeCode, it's just going to scroll over the screen. The next line, image.heart, is going to put a heart image on your microbit. So there's a lot of built-in images. Again, if you've used MakeCode, all of the icons that you have in there, I think they're all the same. One of my favorite things to do with groups is to show them the happy face, to show them the happy image. And if I don't have the autocomplete on, I will ask them to test out some different images and just see what works and what doesn't. And if I mention, say, the duck is one of my favorite images, they'll try other animals and they'll come up with some that don't work. So you can have some really interesting conversations with them about why some images work and some don't, and that somebody else has had to pre-write the code. Somebody's had to describe how to draw a happy image on the screen, and that they haven't done every single image. And then you can lead into building your own images. So it's quite a lot of fun. So now I'm going to do accelerometer. So elif, oh, I'm in capitals now. Sometimes I'll just get groups to do lots of, just write if every time and never use else if. It depends on the age. They have slightly different ways of working, but for the sorts of programs that I do, it usually doesn't matter if they use if or elif. So I'm using elif for now, but I'm going to say if the accelerometer dot was gesture, and then we have to put the name of the gesture in speech marks or apostrophes. They're interchangeable. So I've got apostrophes here and I've got speech mark here, but it all works the same. So now when I flash that program to the microbit, I'm currently doing exactly what I tell kids not to do, which is make lots of changes to my code without testing it first. And I have immediately got an error message because I forgot to put button A was pressed. So let's try again. So now is probably actually a good time to show you what an error message would look like. So if I redelete that, the microbit will scroll an error message on the screen. It can be really hard to read though. So if you click to open the serial and open the REPL, and I'm going to press reset, now it tells us that there's an error, and it tells us that button underscore isn't defined. So it can be quite tricky to pick out the bit of the error you want, and sometimes it can scare children. But yeah, sort of patience and trying to stay calm is the name of the game here. So I know that there's something wrong with my button code. So if I go back, I can find the bit where I put a button, and I can change that bit of code. So that's a really useful feature. So what was I going to do next? I've still got time. We're all good. So yes, we've done that. I'm going to add in some of the features from the new microbit version 2 now, and also show you something that only MicroPython can do and MakeCode cannot, which is make the microbit talk to you. So unfortunately, I did have it connected to my speaker, but I had to disconnect my speaker because of the microphone issues, so you might not be able to hear my microbit talk to you, which is very sad. But I'm going to make the microbit say hello to me when I press the logo on the front of the new microbit, which uses this code here. But if you don't have a new microbit, you could make this happen when you're doing accelerometer or anything. And this pin is also for the pins, the edge connector at the bottom. So I could say if pin 1 is touched, don't quote me on that, that might not actually work. I will check the documentation. But if the logo is touched, then I want it to speech.say hello humans. So this only works in MicroPython. But we also need to import speech to make this happen because the speech library is separate. So what should happen now, if I flash this code to my microbit and make sure there are no errors, I'm going to hold this up to my microphone, which I believe is here. No, this is my microphone. And I'm going to touch so you probably can't hear that, I'm very sorry, but do try it on your own microbits. This will work on version 1 and version 2, and it's just really, really fun. And you can expand this line of code to change the the pitch and all sorts of things. So it's really fun. What was I going to do next? I was going to, oh yes, another cool thing that the new microbit can do. You've probably seen this already. When you first get a new microbit, it plays you a cute little sound, and they're just amazing. They're really, really cute. The hello one is my favorite because it makes it sound like a little robot just sticking its head up and going zoop, zoop. But we'll do this one first. So if I flash this, and I'm going to play it again. So possibly you can hear that, but if not, I'm very, very sorry. It's just a really cute one. Yeah. Oh, suddenly got some sound coming through there. What time is it? We have got another 5 minutes, I believe.
That is correct. That is correct.
Perfect. So I will just show you a line of code about adding the microphone for the new microbit, and then I will come back onto the main screen to answer any questions or take any requests for next bits to code. So we're now going to do elif. So this is where I need to remember what the code is because I haven't had my new microbit very long. So microphone dot, I'm going to say was event. So I'm going to make it listen for me making a loud sound. Sound event dot loud. So all of the information on all of these different bits is in the documentation and probably on the microbit projects somewhere as well. So one of the mistakes I keep making with the microphone is that I ask it to play me a sound when it's heard a sound, which means it gets stuck in an infinite loop of it making a sound and then hearing a sound and so playing the sound again. So don't do that. Learn from my mistakes. I'm going to show a duck image on the screen instead. And the other thing that is very, very useful to remember is in make code, when you display an image, it sort of has an automatic pause built in somewhere. So you always see that image, but that doesn't happen in Python. So if I were to run this code, as I did earlier, getting myself very confused, you will never see the duck because by the time it's shown me the duck, it's already decided that it can no longer hear a sound and it's going to clear the display. So to make sure that we can see the duck, we need to add in a sleep. So I'm going to add in a sleep of 500 milliseconds, so half a second. And now theoretically, when I'm seeing the duck. It's probably infinitely ducking now because I'm talking, but yes, it should. Yeah, it's very fun. Anyway, there's lots of cool things you can do with the microphone. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And yeah, sorry for all the technical issues, everybody. I'm going to have a look through the chat now and see if anyone's got any questions, or Corinne, if you want to ask me anything.
Yes, Danielle has a great question.
Mm-hmm.
She asked if when you use the period in Python, and why do you use that, and why do you use an underscore? So method dot.
Okay, so I will caveat this by saying that I'm not a programmer, I'm an educator, so I probably will use the wrong terminology. But if I go back to my code, so we've got button underscore a dot was pressed. So button underscore a is the thing that's having something done to it, or we're wanting to read from that. So button underscore a or button underscore b, and you can do different things on that. So we can have button underscore a, we can either have it was pressed, or it is pressed, or there's probably some other things that I'm forgetting. So you can call lots of different methods. Thank you, Karina. Lots of different methods on that object. So the dot means we're moving on to the thing that we want to happen to the object. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes, so okay, we've only got a minute left. I was going to ask if anyone wanted me to put anything else on the code, but that is all good. So yes, if anybody has any questions or just wants to chat about microbits and Python, do say hello on Twitter, because I love to talk about microbits. So hopefully see some of you on there. Thank you.